every time. So now we're recording. This is much more for me than you guys on this slide. So welcome, Allie. Allie is a community nutrition instructor from MSU Extension, and she's going to talk to us tonight about food budgeting, and I'm so excited for that. I'm going to stop sharing and let Allie go ahead and share her screen, and we'll get going.
Awesome. So again, thank you for having us. I'm excited. I kind of like it that's a smaller group. I think that opens it up for more discussion and you get more out of it. And so I know that Eva and Zainab are kind of on the same page with me. We learn just as much because we bring some of that background knowledge from curriculum, but you have these life experiences that we love to hear about. So I encourage everybody to just participate, add anything at any time. I did throw into the chat, we collect a presentation form. If you can fill that out for us, it helps us with our funding. But then also if you're interested in some of our other programming that we offer or want to get our newsletter, there's an option to put in like an email address. So I'm gonna share my screen and we'll just jump into it. We're going to talk about food budgeting because we'll talk about healthy eating and physical activity, of course. But just as important as that is like, how do we get the healthy food? How do we make it affordable? How do we make it attainable? And I guess if I hit the share screen button, we would probably see it a lot easier, right? All right, so an MSU Extension does not discriminate against anybody. So we're really excited to have everybody and we aim at being an inclusive and welcoming environment. So I'm gonna jump through to some interesting questions. So I like this idea here. So according to the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, how much money do you think a family of 4, so with 2 young kids, spends on food per week if they're being thrifty? And you can unmute and shout it out at us, or you can put it in the chat. But I like to start this off with that question. So thinking of a family of 4,
this is such a fun one, Allie, because I'm embarrassed at what my family spends, my family of 3. So I'm interested to hear other people's thoughts. I'm going to guess a family who's being thrifty. I don't know, $100 a week?
$100 a week.
That is my guess as well.
All right. Zaina's going to guess for 80.
80.
I would say $100.
$100.
Are we talking right now, this time of age, or back a couple months?
That's a good question, and we're talking about pretty current.
Yeah, Heather, what do you think?
I would say 125, but see, it's so hard to tell now because you can't always get what you want.
Yeah,
it just makes it a lot harder.
Yeah. Okay. So great guesses, and I wish we were in person and I could toss out a frisbee for great answers, but I can't. So just pretend. So actually, according to the USDA, is $129.60 a week. On a more liberal budget, a little bit more wiggle room, $253.30 per week. This is really important to think about when we're trying to budget ourselves, meal plan ourselves, what that looks like, because 129 to 253 is a pretty big difference. That's about double, almost. That's kind of a big wiggle room. So knowing that things change, because I like how you brought up both Larissa and Heather, this was different maybe a few months ago, about a year ago, than it is now. And the point that you brought up, Heather, of what do we have? What can we get? That's really crucial here, especially in Michigan. Not everything's in season year round, and that changes. We have a pretty short growing season, and there's lots of things that we just can't grow here, right? We're not growing pineapples and bananas here. It just does not work with our seasons. So it is important to think about that. And what can we get for that? And it might not seem like a lot, but there is a bit that we can do. So I am curious, before I move forward, how many of you do meal planning. So it's a little bit different than meal prepping. So meal prep is where we cook the food and then we maybe ration and portion it out, but meal planning. So this incorporates having a food budget, making a grocery list, planning out the meals that we're going to have throughout the week and what we have to get at the grocery store. So I'm curious who does that.
I absolutely do that. I make a grocery list, plan out, but I do mine at every 2 weeks. So I do bulk buying. That way I don't have to go to the store very much. So yeah, I do that. But I must say it has changed in the last year and a half. Yeah, it has changed a little bit. I just, whatever I can find is what I'm cooking.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Definitely it has, especially when we've had those moments, the stores kind of became a little bit more barren and, you know, meal plans were thrown out the window when you go to the grocery store and maybe they're limiting what we could get, you know, only 2 cartons of eggs, or all of the canned tomatoes are gone and you were planning on making chili and spaghetti that week.
I'm having a hard time because since the pandemic started, I've been using more curbside. And so you just, if they run out of something, some shoppers are really good and substitute, other shoppers don't substitute. So sometimes you're planning out a meal and then they don't give you one key item, then it becomes very challenging.
That is a really great point to think about when doing that. So using those curbside pickups or those home food delivery services. So what do we do in those situations, right? Like, how can I substitute this, especially so that we don't let whatever we have purchased go to waste, because we don't want to throw away money if we don't have to. So I want to keep all of those things in mind. What are some of the benefits to having a meal prep or food budgeting? So figuring out how much we have to spend on food. Why would that be important? Why are we talking about it?
Like the just grab, I have to have this type of shopping, you're avoiding that. Oh, instead of just putting everything in your cart because you're starving and you don't know what to cook, you actually have a plan and you're not buying 6 bags of cookies when you really only needed 1.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to start us on a whiteboard right now because I kind of want to do some of the do's and don'ts of grocery shopping. And you can feel free to add on the whiteboard. You can annotate yourself or just shout it out at me and I will put it up here. So I definitely heard the don't shop while hungry, because then we are just getting all the things that we want to eat right then and there. And then you eat and you get home and you're like, why did I buy all of these things? I don't need this. What would be some other do's and don'ts?
My biggest do, Allie, is I personally shop at Meijer and I always go on M-Perks prior to my shopping trip just to see what coupons they have or any buy 3, get 1 free deals that are going on, and trying to buy those brands always can save money.
Yeah, I love that. A lot of stores are doing some sort of a reward system. Obviously, MSU Extension doesn't advocate for any specific brands. We'll just sometimes reference certain ones because they're a little bit more common or easier to just to reference, to know about. But I do like those, having a reward system. There's some apps out there that you can electronically clip coupons, which is a little bit more easy than the old cutting them out of paper. But those also are fantastic. Use a coupon if it's available. And then knowing the deals. There are some really great deals that come around, like obviously buy 1, get 1 free, 10 for 10 sales. Those are really helpful. Other do's and don'ts.
I actually find those 10 for 10 things difficult because it's mix or match. Sometimes you may have it all budgeted out on how much you want of each item, but then let's say one item is out, then you're going to no longer get the 10 for 10, 11th one free. So then it's like you either have to make a choice. You're either going to miss out on the free item or you're going to have to backtrack to pick up other items to balance out.
That's a good point too. And I'm putting that in our do's as know how much you can spend and have that ready to go, because then that sale might come up And yeah, you're going to have to think and kind of do some quick math maybe on your feet of, okay, do I want to do the 10 for 10? Is it necessary? And making sure that we're not wasting money and not wasting our food either. Other thoughts of do's and don'ts?
I know one for, I don't know how you would word this correctly, but for a do for me is go early in the day, because then you're less anxious to get out of there and start grabbing everything. So shop early in the day versus
Yes.
shopping during the moment that everybody's going to be at the store right after work.
Yeah, right. Instead of going at 6 p.m. If you're able to, if you can go earlier. Sometimes I like to go grocery shopping at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night because nobody's ever in the store, or really early on a Sunday morning, because there are less people there. And especially now more than ever, we're trying to social distance and be able to give ourselves some more space, and then make sure that things are in the store in stock. I love that idea of when should I go? When's it going to work best for me? And just helping to reduce some of that extra stress on ourselves.
I think for me, the biggest thing is, first of all, I do not like to grocery shop. So curbside in the pandemic has been no different than what I was doing before. I don't want to go in the grocery store, but it's like planning the produce shopping, because it's like you're either buying too much and then it goes bad, or you're not buying enough and then you run out before you want to do that next trip. So that's where I always get the most like tripped up, is like either running out of like fresh stuff, or it's going bad because we're not eating it fast enough. So I don't know how that goes in a do or a don't, but do buy enough, don't buy too much.
So I'm going to put that in as know what you already have. And I think that goes perfectly with our meal planning. So when we are sitting down and deciding what meals are we going to have, what snacks are we going to be having, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we're going to do that activity too in a few minutes, knowing what we have to have is knowing how much we need, right? How much is my family going to eat? How much am I going to actually store as a leftover? Or I like to consider them as planovers. So I am planning to save it. So one of the things that we have is cook once, eat twice. So if I do purchase extra stuff, I can set it aside for a second meal or a second snack. And also rearranging and scheduling these meals and these snacks that use similar ingredients is a really great way to reduce that waste and not either like overbuy or underbuy. So some examples might be ground turkey, which is pretty versatile. So I could make turkey lasagna one night, then maybe the next day I'm going to be making spaghetti and meatballs with it, and then I can do tacos for lunch the following day. They're all going to use that same big component, but I'm not having to waste it. I can use it for different things. I could cook it all at once and then just have it ready to go throughout the rest of the week. And a lot of those will use similar things like cheese too, or tomatoes. So I'm going to be using tomatoes, canned tomatoes in my lasagna. I'm going to put it in my spaghetti, and then I'm going to use those canned diced tomatoes to top some salsa or put it on my tacos. So these are things that I can use multiple meals, multiple days without wasting it. And knowing what I have in my pantry and my freezer. So when it comes to the nutritional value of food, specifically produce, so we're thinking fruits and veggies, which is the best for me to purchase? Fresh, frozen, or canned? What do you think?
I do frozen.
Frozen. Other thoughts?
I don't know what the best is. I know what I do almost all fresh right now, because that's what works for my picky 12-year-old. So like frozen broccoli is not going to cut it, but steaming some fresh broccoli for a minute, which is the same thing, I know this, like is fine, but somehow he knows the difference. I would prefer frozen because then I don't have that problem where I'm like running out or it's going bad.
So I prefer frozen because I can't always find things that are no sodium.
Yeah. Ooh, good point. And we're going to get to that one, Heather. So in the grand scheme of nutritional value, they're not really that different when we're thinking about the way that we're canning and freezing versus fresh. The modern technology for canning and freezing allows us to have options that have less salt and less added sugar. So when we are looking for canned and frozen veggies, we want to look for the ones that have no salt added, reduced sodium, low sodium, something along those lines. And when it comes to frozen and canned fruit, we want to look for the ones that are in 100% fruit juice or no added sugar. So 3 of the nutrients that we look to reduce is added sugar, saturated trans fats, and salt or sodium, because we tend to have too much of those in our diets and we don't actually need them. They're not part of our essential nutrients. So if we can look for the canned and frozen options that don't have that, we're going to be able to reduce that. And the best part is most of the options for canned and frozen are going to be at the exact same price as the ones that have the extra salt and the extra sugar. And like I had mentioned earlier, when we are thinking about what's in season and it's Michigan, not everything's going to be in season. And some things we do like to have frozen or canned. So I can't stand canned spinach. It's a texture thing. I won't do it. But I really love frozen spinach because I put those into my smoothies when it's already cold and it acts as ice and I don't have to add any ice or anything extra too cold in there. But I won't do canned spinach. That's not for me. And Marnie, like you said with your son, is, you know what, so maybe they can tell the difference, maybe not. They just see the frozen bag and they kind of convince themselves that it has a different taste, even though we know it's basically the same, is if we can get it fresh and if it's in season, because there is going to be a cost difference. It will be less expensive when it's in season, or if we can go to the farmer's market too, because it's grown more locally. It doesn't have to travel as far. And then it's also going to have a longer shelf life, because if we're buying something that's maybe coming from California, we have to think about all that time it is spent in transit before it gets to the grocery store, which is why sometimes we'll find certain fruits and veggies at the grocery store that aren't in season. They're more expensive, and then you get them home and maybe the next day it's already starting to turn bad. It just doesn't have quite as long of a shelf life. So these are all different things that we have to be keeping in mind when we're meal planning and meal prepping. So I want to put us into a little bit of practice.
Can I add to that before you
Of
move
course.
on? One of the things that I do, because I haven't been able to get always the unsalted canned vegetables, is you can rinse the vegetables or rinse your beans, and then that helps with the sodium. So that's just another trick that I've been using, because it's been difficult since the pandemic to get the unsalted version.
Yes, and that is one of our other suggestions, is to rinse those canned veggies, because some might not even be 100% like no salt added. They might have to use some salt as a preservative, or again, because of this pandemic, and people are stocking up more, it's not always an option, but you can rinse those off and get rid of a fair amount of that salt and that sodium. It is a little bit more difficult with canned fruit because of the way that they absorb the added sugar in there and it sticks to it more. But being able to do that with the canned vegetables is really fantastic. It's just a simple way for us to do it. So I want us to take a look at a potential way to meal plan and budget. And I was really excited to hear that a lot of us are already doing this or doing some way, some form of it. So we need to think about breakfast, lunch, and dinner, our main meals, and snacks. I think sometimes snacks get a bad reputation as really bad and not very healthy for us, but snacks can be fantastic. They're not meant to be a full meal, but they're a great way to get us by, especially when we have little ones and teenagers that always seem like these endless pits in their stomach trying to fill them up with food. If we can find some healthy snacks, that's a really great way to be able to provide for them. So think about all the days in the week and all of the meals that you're going to plan. This one does have 3 snacks. Maybe we're not doing 3 snacks. Maybe it's 1 or 2, but having those options. And again, think about what foods are going to be able to use for a meal and a snack. And so here we go. Let's look at our 5 My Plate food groups and throw some foods in here to look at. So you tell me what foods you're gonna want, and we'll walk through each one of these food groups. And I'm going to annotate, there we go. Had to go grab the little text part. So 5 My Plate food groups. If you've ever seen our My Plate food graphic, that is part of the United States Department of Agriculture. It used to be My Pyramid, but it's been changed because nobody ate off a pyramid. We eat off plates. It makes more sense that way. We have vegetables, fruits, grains, protein, and dairy. It's recommended that half of what we eat every single day is fruits and vegetables. That's the best way for us to get all of our essential nutrients. 1/4 of what we eat should be grains, primarily whole grains because of fiber, and then 1/4 should be protein. And then no matter what our age is, we still have to have dairy. Even if we're not growing like our little ones are, 3 servings of dairy every single day. We're also gonna consider when shopping an other group. So these are gonna be things that don't necessarily fall into a food group to give us our essential nutrients, but we might need them for preparing some food. So think of oils, herbs and spices, flour. They're not technically any one of these foods always, but we're gonna use them to make one of these foods. So what are some of the go-to vegetables that you like to have in your household?
Carrots.
Me too. I always have baby carrots. What else?
We always have broccoli and asparagus.
I always
Pepper.
have canned tomatoes, great for a side or a sauce.
Peppers.
Perfect. So it's a pretty good list of stuff. I also always have canned tomatoes. What about go-to fruits?
Apples.
We always have bananas.
Grapes.
I always keep canned peaches and pears. Any other fruits?
I'm a canned pineapple kind of gal.
I'd say like frozen berries or frozen mangoes.
Yes. All right, so grain foods. And these are going to be things like bread, pastas, cereals. A lot of breakfast foods tend to fall into the grain foods.
Yeah, do you want my list of all the cereals in our house? We don't
Dog
actually,
with cereal.
yeah, we don't actually eat a lot of grain in our house, but I don't eat any really, but my boys, my husband and my son both eat cereal, and they often eat it for dinner because maybe they did their bigger meal at lunch and then just want something lighter, but so cereal.
So I have a question. What's better, whole wheat or whole grain?
Ooh, Heather, that is a great question. So whole wheat versus whole grain, what is the difference? So it depends on the nutrition facts label. That's going to tell us what we're looking for. So we want to have at least half of the grains we eat to be whole grains because it has fiber. Fiber helps your digestive system. It's what helps you poop. If you don't know that everybody poops at this point, I'm sorry that I'm the first person to tell you, but we all do it. And it's best to have fiber in our diet to help with that. But it also helps fill up our stomach faster and keep us more full longer. So we're not going back for more food and we're able to last a little bit longer between meals. The way that we can tell if a grain food is a whole grain food is on the back of that package, the nutrition facts label. At the bottom is the ingredients list. Ingredients list ordered by weight. So whatever appears first is the most in that food. Whatever appears last is the least in that food. What we want for our whole grain foods is that the first ingredient says something along the lines of whole grain, 100% whole grain corn flour, whole grain wheat flour, whole grain oats. It has to say something along that lines of that whole grain or 100% whole grain. The front of the package can be a little bit deceiving sometimes, where it might just say wheat bread or oat bagel or something like that. And it might even be a little bit darker in pigmentation, the product, that it looks like it might be a whole grain. But if you flip it over, it could say enriched, processed, refined white flour, or even wheat flour. But unless it says something with the grains, 100% whole grain, wheat, corn, whatever flour, it's not a whole grain. So that's how we can tell. So it's a great question because packaging can be a little bit deceiving sometimes.
And Allie brought up a great point about fiber and why we want to have fiber in our diet. Something as a dietetic student that I always love to talk about is how fiber feeds our gut microbiome, which is so important for our health. Especially right now, our microbiome does give us some immunity and it does help protect us from infections. So if we can increase our fiber right now and make our gut very happy and healthy, that would be wonderful.
I love that, right? We've got this stomach that like we're filling it. It's always yelling at us that we're hungry. We need to make it happy and healthy. Fiber can also help with reducing cholesterol. So I like to think of it as heart healthy. I put my heart over my heart to remember. That's why you might see some cereals that have a health claim that say lower cholesterol or that it's heart healthy because of the fiber. We will also get fiber from fruits and veggies. So the skins, the peels of certain fruits and veggies. If you eat celery and you know when you start to chomp on celery and it's really stringy and you still can't quite break down all the celery, that's because we as humans don't have the enzyme to break down fiber. And even though we can eat it, but it still stays pretty whole in us to fill us up and keep us full longer. So that's where we'll get some fiber as well, but we usually see a lot of it in whole grain foods. So we got cereal. I'm gonna add bread in here.
Farro.
Say it again.
Farro. Farro.
There we go. I thought you said borrow and I thought, what are we borrowing?
I always have rice on hand.
Yep.
Rice, yes.
Cornmeal.
Yeah, cornmeal. I always typically have some sort of a pasta around too, whether it's spaghetti or elbow macaroni, something is in there. So I want to move out of protein. And if we remember, any of us remember the old My pyramid, it used to say meat. Why do you think they changed it from meat to protein?
Because you can get protein and other things besides meat, and we eat too much meat.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different sources of protein that aren't always animal sources. And we recommend that you vary your protein to reduce saturated fats and cholesterol. So eating always the same thing is not always so great for us. Not only does it get really boring, but we can overconsume things. So we have animal product or animal-based proteins, but there's also lots of plant-based proteins. So things like peanut butter, nuts, seeds, beans, legumes. So chickpeas, tofu is made out of soybeans, and also some dairy products will give us protein. So milk, yogurt, eggs, we're going to get some protein. I like to think of that food group as kind of a buy one, get one free sale where we get our dairy and we get our protein. So what are some proteins that you like to have on hand?
I always have eggs. Always. So good.
Any kind of nut butter?
Yeah, so like peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter. I always have lots of beans, canned beans on hand. Other proteins that are go-to in your household?
Definitely for my kiddo, like yogurt, sliced turkey.
Deli meats. That's not how you spell deli.
A little different. I like to have vegan jerky. A lot of times it's made out of seitan, and I really enjoy that. So that is just gluten. So it's a protein that's oftentimes found in wheat, but they single it out, take away all the carbohydrates, and just leave the protein.
Awesome. I hadn't heard of vegan jerky, so I'll have to try it. I'm also going to toss in some ground turkey. Maybe you could do ground beef as well. Turkey is a more lean protein. So turkey, chicken, seafood are leaner animal options. All right, let's move on to our dairy foods. Go-to dairy foods in your household. And when we talk about dairy foods, a lot of the times we do just think about the animal products. Our goal for dairy foods is to get calcium and vitamin D, which help with strong bones and teeth. But we can also find some dairy alternatives that will give us those same nutrients. Whether or not it's an allergy, a sensitivity, we just don't like it or can't eat it for different reasons. There's a lot of different alternatives. So I'm going to toss in almond milk. Other dairy foods you like to keep on hand?
Cream cheese.
Cream cheese.
Greek yogurt.
Yes. Oh, I love Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt is a really great dairy product. It is lower in sugar and fat, and you can use it for a lot of different things. If you get just the plain Greek yogurt, you can either flavor it with fruit and honey to make it sweeter. You can make your own kind of alternative mayonnaise with it, ranch dressing, different dips too. I'll also put, go ahead, Eva.
Low-fat cottage cheese.
Yeah, low-fat cottage cheese. Just like with protein, we want to encourage choosing dairy options that are low fat so that they can be more heart healthy. All right, and now I'm going to jump us to our other group. So these are things like we might want to have vegetable oil. I'm going to put some spices. We might need butter for certain recipes. So again, they're things that don't fall into any of these food groups, but we do need them to make things, right? But we're not going to eat a whole stick of butter as a snack. So we have a pretty good list right here. And I don't think anything on our list would be something that is so expensive for us or unattainable at just about any time throughout the year. A lot of these options as well, if we can't get them fresh, there's a frozen, there's a canned, or even a dried option, right? Dried fruit, dried and dehydrated vegetables as well. So let's look at this and let's make a couple of meals. And I'm not going to move our screen. We'll just do it right here. But looking at all these different foods that we have, what are some meals that we could make? I'm going to start us off and put spaghetti. The two T's there, it doesn't matter.
Stuffed peppers.
Ooh, stuffed peppers. So spaghetti and stuffed peppers would use a lot of the same ingredients. So we've got our peppers. We can use our ground turkey. We can also cut that in half and do ground turkey with black beans too. So if we don't have a lot of ground turkey left, we want to use up some canned beans before they go bad. And then we can use the pasta for the spaghetti. That is perfect.
For a meatless Monday option, I always love to have some canned tomatoes, beans, rice, and then lots of spices for some flavor.
Yeah. We can also use that same, almost the same ingredients and make a chili.
I think I would do some rice with probably the asparagus, and then just like a hard-boiled egg on top. It's like a super simple lunch, and some soy sauce. That should be in the other category. You can never have too much soy sauce in your house.
Yeah, great. So thinking about those is the other category, and we can use that for a lot of different recipes. We can use the hard-boiled eggs too, and we can make deviled eggs, egg salad sandwich, different like egg salad itself. We could put it on a salad, like a chef salad. So these are all great meal ideas that don't keep us restricted to the same boring thing. If you're like me, I get really tired if I'm making the same thing every single week. Maybe that works for you, but it doesn't always work for everybody. Maybe our kids are getting a little bit tired of having the same thing too. I also like all the stuff we have for yogurt parfaits. And then as a snack, smoothies, right? We've got the fruit, we've got the Greek yogurt. Maybe we have some granola. We can make our own granola by getting just quick oats and putting those in the oven with some seasonings like nutmeg and cinnamon, maybe some honey, or we can purchase it ourselves. And that just depends. Maybe we find something that's on sale. Sometimes things like granola can be more expensive, but it's pretty inexpensive to buy one of those big tubs of oats and make it ourselves. A lot of the times we're going to find less expensive and healthier options that are lower in added sugar, saturated trans fats, and salt by making it ourselves. So if we're not paying for the convenience of it to be prepackaged for us or individually packaged or made already for us, and we do it ourselves, we're going to save a lot of money. Any thoughts or questions about that activity before I keep moving us forward? Awesome. So I'm going to show this Michigan Produce Availability Guide, and I will share that out with you all afterwards. It is very tiny on the screen. But this is really handy. There's also an app, and the name of the app is out of my mind right now, but when I remember that, I'll also share that out in the email, that you can use at like farmers markets too, to know what's available, what's in season. So am I going to get this? Is it going to be the most fresh? Is it going to have the longest shelf life? And is it going to taste the best, right? Or should I go for a frozen option or a canned option? And obviously, again, in Michigan, there's certain things we just don't grow here that aren't going to be in season here, but maybe they're in season in a lower state or a lower region that's a little bit closer to us. So like avocados, bananas, pineapples, where it will be less expensive. All right, and with our eating healthy and meal budgeting, what we like to incorporate is physical activity, because just as important as making sure that I'm eating what's proper for my body, providing that proper food and nutrition for my body, I also need to make sure that I'm being physically active, because I could eat super healthy all day long, and if I'm not being physically active, I might not be doing enough for my body, and vice versa. And physical activity looks different for all of us at all different ages and stages and abilities. So I'm going to encourage you all to do this activity with me, but if you don't want to, that's totally fine. Feel free to modify it, change it. You know your body best. So if something's uncomfortable, it hurts, do whatever you need to do. The best part is I'm not even going to make us stand up. We're just going to stay in our chairs and do some stretches in our chairs. I'm going to push myself back so you can see my whole body here. So get yourself in a comfortable sitting position. I'm going to lower my chair a little bit so that my feet are on the ground. Take off my jacket so I can actually stretch my arms. Get our back straight. Hands, we can just leave them on our lap. And we're just going to do some chair stretches that I found really helpful working from home, being at my desk, sitting at my computer all day long, Zooming. I need to do a little bit of movement, but I'm not always able to get up and go for a walk or do something else. So first, let's take a deep breath in through our nose, out through our mouths. And with our back straight, let's stretch out our necks. So starting at one side, just let your neck fall. We're gonna let it go straight forward. We're not pulling it or stretching it too hard, just wherever gravity lets it fall. So physical activity has a lot of benefits to us. And as we go to the other side, start thinking about why it's important that we're being active and moving our bodies. We have muscles and joints, our limbs move, our necks move a little bit, maybe some days better than the others. We let our head go to the back. And we're gonna go back that rotation, but the opposite way. It also helps us to use the energy that we get from food. We know that energy that we don't use can get stored in our body. So we want to use it as best as possible. All right, come back to center again. We're going to stretch out our arms. So taking one arm, let it go across your chest. Use our other arm to kind of form a T, and we're going to pull it back. You might even want to grab your shoulder or your elbow and pull that arm straight into you. All right, go ahead and let them loose, and let's swap to that other arm straight across our chest, pulling it in. So for our kids, for our little ones, anybody under the age of 18, it is recommended to get at least 60 minutes of physical activity in every single day. What do you think is a recommendation for anybody who is over the age of 18? And I'll let you think for a second as we go into our next stretch. This one, we're going to take one arm and we're going to kind of pat ourselves on the back. And while we do that, pull with the other arm as best as possible, either from the back or we can push up from the front. So what do we think about anybody who's over the age of 18? Do you think it's more, less, or the same amount of physical activity? All right, go ahead and stretch, and you can go ahead and unmute and let me know what your thoughts are before we go into the other side.
I would say the same.
Think the same. I see some heads nodding. So the recommendation for anyone over the age of 18 is 150 minutes a week. A week. Go ahead and let your arms loose. So that roughly is about 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. So it is less, but it's still important that we're being active. All right, this next one, let's go ahead and stretch our arms up. You can go ahead and give a little bit of a stretch to your back if you're feeling it. And we're gonna bend over and just try to touch our toes if possible. Let your body fall wherever it feels like it wants to fall. This is just like when we're standing and doing a forward fold. We're getting a very similar stretch, but we don't have to get out of our chairs. Come back up, reach to the sky. Let's do that forward fold one more time. Make sure that we're breathing throughout all of these activities. All right, come back up. This last one is just a stretch for our backs. And again, feel free to modify, change however you are. I'm gonna smooth my chair a little bit so you can see. What we're gonna do is twist our backs with our feet still pointing forward. I'm gonna hook one arm over my chair and try to grab the back of my chair. If we have a back to our chair, it could be a little bit more difficult without. And I'm trying to look past my shoulder. Again, my toes are still pointed forward. I'm trying to keep them flat on the ground, but I'm trying to look past my shoulder. Come back into the center, and let's do that to the other side. If we can, hook our arm over with our opposite arm, grabbing and giving ourselves a little bit more of a twist to look past our shoulders. And if you're like me, your back might have just snapped, crackled, and popped a little bit as we did that twist. Let's come back to center. Let's do 2 more deep belly breaths. So in through our nose, out through our mouths. If you want, you can put your hands on your stomach to feel that. Breathe in and out. Last one in and out. All right, awesome. I'm gonna scooch back up slowly but surely for us to finish our presentation. So again, 60 minutes at least for youth, anybody under the age of 18, and for all of us over the age of 18, 150 minutes or 2.5 hours every single week, right? Moving our bodies is so important. We use up that energy, we strengthen our muscles, but it's also helping strengthen and improve our heart, our respiratory system. Physical activity has been shown to reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. So it's really great for our mental health. All right. So as we wrap up with our last few minutes, I want to talk about name brand versus generic. So back to our grocery shopping. Which one do you think is the name brand one? And which one do you think is the generic one? Do they look like they're very different? Not a huge difference here. I guess maybe if I stare at these for a really long time, I might see a little bit. These are both different types of cereals, so some rice cereals, right? One of them is generic, one of them is name brand, not a huge difference. Sometimes we will maybe find certain things like a certain ketchup, it just has to be that brand. But overall, name brand and generic don't have a big difference besides the price. And if it's things like canned tomatoes, so if I'm going to be making a chili or I'm making my own pasta sauce, I don't really care what the brand might be because I'm adding my own seasonings and spices. I'm adding the pasta itself. Maybe I'm adding ground beef or ground turkey, where I'm changing the flavor of it anyways. And I'm going to be able to save some money if I buy generic. Also, when we're looking at not just name brand and generic, but bulk versus single servings, that's important too. Some things can be really great to buy in bulk. And we look at the unit price. Who here has ever used the unit price before? A couple of us, awesome. So I thought I had my unit price on here, but I don't, and that's okay. Unit price, we're gonna find on those extremely tiny little bar scan tags that are on the shelves. And that's gonna show you what the cost is per the unit. So whether the unit is in ounces, milliliters, typically we're finding a lot of things in ounces, and that can help us break it down if I'm going to be spending more or less money, if it's single serve, if it's in bulk, name brand, and generic. So this is great. Some things I might want to buy in bulk. I like to buy my yogurt in those big tubs, and while the tub itself is more expensive at that full price than a single serve, when I break it down by unit price, the units are significantly less expensive. And because I'm making yogurt parfaits or a smoothie, I don't really mind having them in a big bulk. But maybe there are some things that you don't want to buy in bulk because you just don't eat them as often or as frequently. So that's important to think about, is even though it's cheaper by unit to buy it in bulk, if it's just going to go to waste, maybe it's a less expensive option to buy that single serve. So as we finish up in our last couple of minutes, I will ask if we have questions, but I also want to again share this nutrition facts or nutrition presentation form, throw that in there into the chat, filling that out. I myself, also Zainab, we do these programs and we will do them as 6-week programs to really dive in deep. Of course, 1 hour is not really enough to get into all of the great stuff about eating healthy, physical activity, food safety, food budgeting, and meal planning. But if you are interested in participating in one of our programs, which again are at no cost to you, feel free to add your information into that presentation form. It's completely anonymous if you don't want to, but if you are interested, we would love to connect with you and have you in one of our groups. But any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, compliments, I will take them all.
Just wanted to throw out there that along with our programming, we do encourage you to bring your kids to our programs because they can learn a lot too. And we have curriculums for kids.
Yes.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to do that. My kid saw a video on YouTube the other day from some doctor talking about leaky gut and how it's all caused by rice. So you can imagine that the conversation. So he keeps seeing me eating rice and he's like, don't eat that. And I'm like, no, don't get medical advice off YouTube, please. Allie, I had a question about protein. I feel like people think they need way more protein than they actually do. Can you talk about that a little? Like, what do we actually need?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously some things will be more specific from person to person, but when we were looking at our My Plate, and I realized they put the My Plate at the very end of this presentation, so I can share the screen as we got to that. The Start Simple with My Plate, and you can get more information at myplate.gov. But only a quarter of what we eat in general, so 25% about of all the stuff we eat in a day, should be protein based. And of course, protein can come in things that aren't just 100% protein. So when we eat animal-based proteins like a hamburger, we're also going to get some fat in there, and there are some heart healthy fats. Same thing with dairy products, or we're eating beans, we're going to get fiber and protein. So being mindful that a quarter of what we're putting in our plate, in our bowl, whatever we're eating off of, should be proteins. But the big takeaway is that half of what we're eating comes from fruits and vegetables. But we can also get protein sources from some plant-based things, right? So it doesn't always have to be animal products. And again, also from dairy products. The recommended serving size for most proteins is 3 to 4 ounces when we're having protein at like a meal. And 3 to 4 ounces is just about the size of the palm of our hand. So I think of some of those restaurants or places that maybe advertise for a 16 or 20 ounce steak. When we're just looking at 3 to 4 ounces, it's a lot smaller. It's a great question.
Going off of that really quick, the RDA, which is our recommended dietary allowance, calls for a healthy adult. I really cannot stress that enough. If you have a health condition, this equation does not work for you, but a healthy adult can have 0.8 grams of protein a day is recommended per kilogram of body weight. So kilograms to pounds, you divide your pounds by 2.2 to get your kilograms times by 0.8. A little bit long, but that's the actual equation.
No, that's helpful.
And I just put those equations in the chat as well with the My Plate website. So that is really helpful. So that's how you can determine more of what's specific for you, because it does change, right? It changes depending on how much we weigh, what our age is, how physically active we are as well. Any other last thoughts and questions before we wrap up?
Are all your classes online now?
Yes, as of right now, they are all online.
Okay.
Well, if there's no other thoughts and questions, thank you for having us. I really appreciate the discussion. Again, that's why I like to have these groups, because I think we get a lot more out of it. And Marnie, if you want to share my contact information too, if anybody else has any other questions or thoughts, want to know about future programming, reach out anytime.
Absolutely, Allie. Thank you so much. And I will share all of that out with our group, and our larger group will get that information also. So thank you. That was really fun. You did it. That was great.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I really enjoyed it. I was super engaged.
I love it.
Thank you. Thanks, Larissa.
Have a great night, everybody.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone. Have a great night.
You too. Bye. So
Thank
Heather.
you.
Oh, did I lose Heather already? Oh no, there you are. Hi, Heather. So normally Larissa and Heather, I would go through a little bit of Parent Coalition stuff. So I'm going to do that really quickly, since we don't have many people here. And I was going to make
Is it okay if I stand, Marty? Or would you like
Yes,
me to leave?
you are. And
Okay.
tonight I'm literally just going to go over some upcoming events. Usually I do a little bit of just update on what we've been doing for the month, but the evening meetings, I'm doing that a little bit less and just kind of doing it in a newsletter, so I don't keep people on too long. But Heather, I think you're signed up for this. We're going to have Allie back next week for the healthy snacking, which I'm really excited about because we do lots of snacking in our house. And then later this month, we've got our parent cafe, which is always on the last Tuesday of the month. So Heather, I hope you can come. And Larissa, if you want to come, that would be great too. And that's pretty much it. Otherwise, I was just going to talk to folks about our care coordinator. But Heather, I know I've talked to you about that already. And I know you're not looking for childcare right now, but if anybody knows anyone in Eaton County who is looking for childcare as part of our Trusted Advisor grant, we have Betsy Clinton with us, and she is doing work to connect families in Eaton County with childcare, preschool, developmental screenings, early intervention referrals. So she is available if anybody knows anybody who's having a hard time accessing those things. And last but not least, we would do a raffle. But Heather, since you're the only person here, you get to win the raffle tonight. So I will be sending you an email later and you can tell me what gift card you want. Heather, did you have any questions about anything?
No, I'm sure you'll see me at the cafe.
Yes, I know I will. Larissa Heather has been my one steady face this last year, and I've appreciated it so much. She was on the coalition before I joined, and she's my one. I've got a couple others. Vanessa helps out sometimes, but her kids ended up having a conflict with the nights that we have a lot of our stuff. So I haven't seen her in a while, but Heather is always there to make me just so happy that I have a parent.
That's really good, Heather, that you're involved and you're being that one amazing voice for everybody in the community.
Yeah.
It is absolutely. And that's exactly what Larissa is, that sometimes, sometimes one voice makes all the difference and the
It
things
sure
that are
does.
happening.
It sure
So
does.
I'm always so happy to see Heather on. So thank you both for coming tonight and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
All right.
The day it is anymore.
Thank
The
you so
rest
much
of your
for
Wednesday.
inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yes, Larissa, and I'll send you, feel free to invite your parents to that healthy snacking one too, because
I did. I invited
Good.
them.
Okay.
But
I know it's hard, but this will be, we do host all of these. We record them and put them on our YouTube channel, so I can share that with you too if they want to watch it after the fact. So
all right.
sometimes that's a nice way to do it. All right. Bye,
Right,
ladies.
thank you. You guys have a good
Bye.
night.
Bye.